Arizona reviving a zombie law from 1864, and Donald Trump finally revealing his most recent position on abortion. A lot is happening. My name is Brittany Page, and this is the Page Perspective. So this is actually the perfect storm to fully illustrate the situation that we have as far as the right's approach to abortion in this country. And I hope you stick around until the end of the video, because I'm going to fully map this out for you. The desperation, the lies, the never-ending efforts to say whatever they need to say to retain power. It's all here in these two major news stories this week. We're going to start with Donald Trump because that came first. And actually, the order does matter here. So if you Google the words Donald Trump and abortion, the headlines will make your head spin, and you'll likely struggle to fully understand what it is exactly that Donald Trump said about his plan for abortion should he become president. Now, part of this announcement was what we expected. It wasn't honest. It wasn't direct. Well, one aspect of it was direct. And listen, I went back and forth on whether to play parts of this statement, and I just couldn't do it. In between the parts that I wanted to play, there were these blatant falsehoods that I don't want to promote here. So I'm just going to pop up times as a reference for the things that he said. And you can go and match those times to the link to his announcement in the description below. So the one part that was direct, he said he was proudly responsible for ending Roe v. Wade. This, of course, meant that the federal protections for the right to abortion up to the point of fetal viability were eliminated, and the issue was sent back to the states, causing the waves of chaos that we see now across the states, including in Arizona, which will come into play shortly. He even thanked the justices by name, the ones who worked with him to overturn Roe. His current position on abortion, he claims, is that the states will decide by legislation or by vote where the limits should be placed in terms of the number of weeks. At the end of the day, it's all about the will of the people, he repeats several times. Okay. And maybe I should play this part because really this is the thesis of his entire statement.
You must follow your heart of this issue, but remember, you must also win elections.
Yes, you must follow your heart, but remember, you must also win elections. And this is precisely the reason you didn't hear Trump specify where he stands on banning abortions at a certain number of weeks. He just repeats what the current climate of the country is, that states get to decide their own abortion laws. Yes. Thank you. We're aware of the current state of things. Just a couple of months ago, he was privately expressing support for a national ban around 16 weeks. Now he's decided to not take a stance publicly. Why? He wants to win this election. He doesn't want to get into specifics because he knows that the Republican Party is losing on the issue of abortion as the electorate sees the damaging impact of abortion bans across the country. Damaging impact that I have covered numerous times here on this channel. But there's another reason he isn't getting into specifics, and that's because the plan for abortion is much worse than where things stand now. And this isn't a secret plot. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is a plan that is laid out before you in mainstream reporting, and it involves the Comstock Act. I want you to be so very familiar with the Comstock Act because you should want to know where every politician in your orbit stands on this issue. Let's turn to PBS for a summary on the Comstock Act. Quote, originally passed in 1873 and named for an anti-vice crusader, the Comstock Act was intended to prohibit the mailing of contraceptives, lewd writings, and any instrument, substance, drug, medicine, or thing that could be used in an abortion. The law's scope has been repeatedly narrowed by federal courts and Congress, which eliminated the reference to contraceptives in the 1970s, and the federal government hasn't enforced the law since the 1930s, according to legal experts. But the Comstock Act is newly in play in court battles over mifepristone, the very safe medication used in the most common type of abortion in this country, medication abortion. And anti-abortion activists favor reaching for the Comstock Act over a federal abortion ban. Just ask Jonathan F. Mitchell, an anti-abortion lawyer who has his hand in crafting legislation to make abortion illegal. Here he is quoted this year, just a couple months ago, in the New York Times, quote, "We don't need a federal ban when we have Comstock on the books," said Jonathan F. Mitchell, the legal force behind a 2021 Texas law that found a way to effectively ban abortion in the state before Roe v. Wade was overturned. Quote, "There's a smorgasbord of options." Mr. Mitchell, who represented Mr. Trump in arguments before the Supreme Court over whether the former president could appear on the ballot in Colorado, indicated that anti-abortion strategists had purposefully been quiet about their more advanced plans, given the political liability the issue has become for Republicans. Quote, "I hope he," meaning Trump, "doesn't know about the existence of Comstock because I just don't want him to shoot off his mouth," Mr. Mitchell said of Mr. Trump. "I think the pro-life groups should keep their mouths shut as much as possible until the election." Remember when I said this isn't some conspiracy theory? They're saying it out loud. Do not be honest about your true intentions related to a full ban on abortion. We will do what we need to do to implement a full ban on abortion when we get into power. That's what he just said. How was this printed in the New York Times in February without it being front page news every day until the election? We need to ask every single Republican, reporters need to ask every single Republican about where they stand on the Comstock Act every chance they get. And every single Democrat needs to be screaming from the rooftops about repealing the Comstock Act. Shout out to Cori Bush for being the first Democrat to do so. And I recommend you read that entire New York Times article because it touches on Project 2025, the plans to circumvent Congress and ban abortion through any means necessary. And this brings us to the ruling from the Arizona Supreme Court this week. Reading from NBC News. Quote, "The ruling allows an 1864 law in Arizona to stand that made abortion a felony punishable by 2 to 5 years in prison for anyone who performs one or helps a woman obtain one. The law, which was codified in 1901 and again in 1913, outlaws abortion from the moment of conception, but includes an exception to save the woman's life." 1864. Women couldn't vote. So they had no say in this law that will now control their existence. Arizona wasn't even a state in 1864. The Arizona Attorney General, who is a Democrat, who won her election by fewer than 300 votes, by the way, announced that no woman will be prosecuted under the law as long as she remains Attorney General, and abortion is set to be on the ballot in November. These are both good signs. But here's the thing. Just one day after Donald Trump's long-awaited announcement that abortion laws are up to the states, a thing that's already happening, Arizona, a state, decided to ban nearly all abortions. And Arizona Republicans are issuing statements left and right, denouncing the decision from the Arizona Supreme Court, even when they previously praised abortion bans. Guys, what's happening to leaving it up to the states? Why are you so scared? Let's turn to NBC News for a few examples. Quote, Arizona Senate candidate Kari Lake, who 2 years ago called the 1864 statute a great law, said Tuesday that it was out of step with Arizonans. "I oppose today's ruling," she said, while also adding, "I wholeheartedly agree with President Trump. This is a very personal issue that should be determined by each individual state and her people." Rep. David Schweikert, Republican in Arizona, who in 2021 co-sponsored the Life at Conception Act, which declared the right to life at the moment of fertilization, also voiced disapproval of the ruling, saying abortion should be decided by Arizonans, not legislated from the bench. In 2022, Schweikert wrote on X that he was, quote, "pleased with the fall of Roe v. Wade." They're counting on you to not pay attention. And I know it's so much to keep up with. It's a lot to keep up with, but this is so important. The Comstock Act from 1873, an abortion ban from 1864, we need not be controlled by these archaic ideas. It's absurd. And when the same people who seek to enforce these archaic ideas start pretending that they don't support them, you should want to interrogate that more deeply. Republicans are trying to tell us what they think we want to hear. But as Trump said, we know they're just following their hearts, and more importantly, trying to win the election. What do you think? I'd love to know. Call 657-464-7609 or send an email to idoubtit@dollemore.com. You can support my work on Patreon at patreon.com/idoubtitpodcast, or you can become a beautiful channel member for as little as $1.99 a month. And let's take some time to thank my beautiful new channel members right now. Thank you to Big Daddy Ed 2, Janessa Steele, and Teresa Snyder. Thank you so much for your support of this work. Sound off in the comments, please. I'd love to know what you think, and I will look forward to seeing you next time.